All right, good morning. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Secure Pork Supply Plan. And to kind of set the stage for that, we've talked now about what happens on an infected premises a bit and some of the considerations and the resources that will be put into eliminating the virus on that site. But then I want you to start to think about, we have the buffer zone around that, which is the control area, and the control area was mentioned a couple of times during, I think, Dr. Roll's presentation, and the surveillance zone. But now I want you to think about if you're one of these black dots that's somewhere in that control area, you're not an infected premises, but you are in the control area. So what's going to happen to you is that you're going to be under a restricted movement and be able to move animals only with a movement permit. And so what can you do as a site that is restricted to move in that control area that you're not infected and all the resources are going towards those infected sites to help clean those up? What can you do to protect your animals in the meantime and to keep your operation functioning? So one bit of information as we talk about biosecurity is that it was found that in the United Kingdom in the FMD outbreak in 2001, that farmers that practiced good biosecurity measures were 5 times less likely to become infected. I know that's FMD, but again, it does reflect the importance of biosecurity. So just to be clear, the Secure Pork Supply Plan is a plan for those that are affected by the movement restrictions, but they're not infected with the disease. It is a voluntary program. It's not something that the government's going to come in and tell you to do, but it offers guidance because the virus doesn't always read the playbook, and so depending on how the outbreak would play out would depend on the response effort. But we've got those plans in place. We've had some of those discussions, and now we need to start thinking on our farms what we can do at the farm level to implement these things that are in the biosecurity and other components of the Secure Pork Supply Plan. So as we've talked about, one important component is biosecurity. And we don't have a lot of time today to go into all the different parts of the plan. So I'm just going to be touching the basis of the plan and telling you where you can go for more information. So to highlight the biosecurity side, one of the things that Dr. Rolls talked about was the biosecurity on the sites. And it's always important to have a biosecurity manager on the site, someone on that site to make sure that the day-to-day biosecurity measures are being followed on the site. Part of the plan is to write your own site-specific biosecurity plan, and you can do that with the assistance of a herd veterinarian. To create a site-specific map on how inputs and outputs will flow on that site, and then to train employees on the site. So if you're a owner-operator of your site, you have other employees, and you're like, what am I going to do for training? We do have a lot of options that you can educate yourself too on biosecurity. So routine biosecurity is not enough. These are viruses that we do not have in this country, that our animals are naive to, and we need to have a higher level of biosecurity. So some of the resources that we have available to you for your use are the checklist. So the checklist has about 10 different items in there, talks about visitors and employees and animal movement and transport vehicles, and there's different components on there as far as complying with some of the biosecurity measures that we have. And then if you want more information, so what's in the checklist is very short description, and then if you're like, well, what are some ideas on how I could implement that, you can go to the longer detailed information manual. So it's kind of a resource reference for you. And then if you've never written a biosecurity plan and you just don't know where to start, we do have some template options. So those you can download and you can type in how it fits to your farm, or you can print them off and even just write in your plan. And again, it's a enhanced higher level of biosecurity. So where do you get those? So the Secure Pork website is securepork.org. And if you look there with the red circle, there's a pork producer tab at the top. And you see the biosecurity circle there to your left. And then you just go to the biosecurity checklist, click on it, and it'll open up the biosecurity checklist. So that gives you an idea of where to find that. Again, the same location, pork producers, biosecurity, and if you go down a little bit farther, you can get the customizable templates that you can complete. And also as far as the site map, There's instructions there if you have never looked at a Google Earth map or ever printed one off. If you start with the map and you print the map and then you look at the templates and you start figuring out how you can change movement or utilize truck movement, that sort of thing, and draw in all the components on the map for your site too. So some of the things that are in the plan that take a lot of thought process, there's many things there that many of you probably already do on a daily basis, but there's some things, and our previous speakers talked to these, but considered the carcass disposal, and Dr. Benjamin just did a very good job talking about carcass disposal options. The top left, are you also a grain farmer? So are you going to have semis, equipment coming off and on your farm? And is that going to be something that's going to be crossing the same traffic as other equipment for the hog operation? Bottom left, manure. That's one thing that we haven't touched on today, but that is going to be a movement that will be permitted in outbreak. So if you're in that control area and you're not infected, you still have to get a movement permit for the manure. And also to the point, how are you going to do that you're not bringing back disease from other sites in the area that might be infected? So what are your manure disposal options that you have? And then also, I have a picture of our cattle there because if you have, there's many producers that have different species. And granted, that doesn't pertain to African swine fever, but if it's a foot and mouth disease outbreak, you're going to have plans for your cattle as well. So that's something to keep in mind because foot and mouth disease does affect cattle, sheep, goats, as well as pigs. Concerning the biosecurity training, we have some different options. There's laminated posters that are just some reminders that you can hang in the barns to help remind people of some of the tasks to watch out for on a day-to-day basis. We also have some videos. There's 3 up there now in English and Spanish. We're still working on a couple of more. So if you have a biosecurity training in place already for employees, go with it. You don't have to change it. Maybe just take an agenda, have them do a sign-in and keep record of that so that you can show that they've been trained in biosecurity. If you don't and would like to use these, they're download or you can watch them, again, English and Spanish. They cover the introduction to biosecurity, not bringing risks to the farm or diseases to the farm. Then there's a couple other ones on specific parts of the biosecurity components. But the biggest thing is that everyone that comes onto the site, as far as the producers, the employees, the visitors, all need to know the biosecurity measures they're to follow when they come on the site. And we talk in the plan even about having the feed truck driver, that they have a sheet where they know the map where they're supposed to drive and what their limitations are. I like the idea of having the walkie-talkies or them to be able to communicate so that you don't have a lot of cross traffic with people opening the bins and coming out of the buildings. So those are located, again, at securepork.org. You can go to the training materials tab under biosecurity, find them there at the top, or the training videos that you can click on, or the posters you can get free through the pork store, and there's information there on how to get those for your site. I want to touch on just a couple other things on the plan because it's not only biosecurity. There's a couple other big pieces to it. One is the premises identification number, or PIN. That acts kind of like your Social Security number. The PIN is the glue that ties all the information together in an outbreak. So all your diagnostic test results, your everything that your movement, your permits, movement permits, everything is going to be tied in with that PIN number. So it's important that you have that PIN number in relation to this, where the animals are located. And what you can do prior to an outbreak is you can start putting that PIN on all your movement records and on your diagnostic laboratory submissions. And I know Iowa State does a very good job of helping you do that. So if you have any questions and you're not doing that now, just contact them and they'll help you through that. It's a good habit to get started before an outbreak. Another part is we talk about record keeping. And there's going to be different records that you're going to keep as far as the animal movements, the visitor movements. Electronic records are preferred because they're easier to search. But we do have some forms there that can be completed. Some examples might include that you have feed tags or from the feed tickets that you have. Maybe that might be one of the forms that you keep as far as the feed movement on and off the site, whereas the animal movements might be electronic. It's kind of what works for your site, but you just need to make sure that those are available to our state animal health officials in the event of an outbreak to share so that they can assess the level of risk of moving your animals off the site. Recognizing the disease, and it was shown earlier that some of the diseases like African swine fever can look like some of the endemic diseases you have that we currently have in the United States, but it's important to know what you're looking for, and if parameters are out of whack, it's important to call your herd veterinarian to help you do some testing and discern if it's a foreign animal disease. But these are some of the resources again. The posters can be through the pork store again, like the biosecurity posters that you can order those free of charge and have them shipped to your site to hang in the barns. Oh, I'm sorry. A couple other things. Contingency planning. Here in Iowa, it's proven lately that the weather's not always really conducive to spraying off vehicles and disinfecting, and so it's always important to start talking about this might be what we do on this day, but in horrible weather, how are we going to handle some of these biosecurity measures? What if we have a standstill or a stop movement for a period of time that's a couple of weeks? How are we going to handle the animals as far as welfare, overcrowding? And what are we going to do to make sure we do that in a biosecure manner? Because again, these are the sites that are not infected. So how can we handle disposing if we have a welfare issue, or if we have an endemic disease come through and animals die? How are we going to dispose of those animals and make sure that we don't expose our site to the foreign animal disease? And then I've already mentioned the manure storage issue. So that's all I have. Thank you.